So obviously I'm not Deacon Ron, who was supposed to preach today, but unfortunately has come down actually with really the flu. He did go to the doctor and was tested, and he does have flu type A. So we will keep him in our prayers, and I will preach today on a bit of short notice, but that's all right. Today, well actually, the whole Epiphany season is about the Word of God going out, just past a little group of people and into the whole world. And we kind of started that on the day of Epiphany with the idea of Gentiles coming from very far away, the wise men. We continued that on the first Sunday of Epiphany with the baptism of Jesus, which we mark as the beginning of his public ministry. And then last week and this week, the focus has been on call. And the idea of call, Christian call, is a central part of our faith and the faith of most religions. That somehow the God who is the God of the universe calls us to certain things in this life. There are lots of jokes about that. One goes like this. There was a farmer out in the fields who looked up into the sky and saw a cloud formation and was just sure that what he saw in that formation were these three letters, G, P, C. He saw the clouds formed in the G, P, C and just knew in his heart that it was a call from God. And not only that, he knew immediately what that call was. GPC, go preach Christ. And so he went to the elders of his church and explained to them that he had this call from God to go preach Christ. And he wanted to preach that Sunday in the church because he had that call. And so the elders, they let him. And so he got up that Sunday to preach, and that sermon went on and on and on and around and around and around. It reminded me of my friend John Ross, who's the dean of the cathedral. John used to say when he felt like his sermon hadn't quite hit the mark, or he had not quite done what he thought was his best, on the way out, he would, in the aisle, I would be walking next to him, he would lean over to me and say, I needed to get that sermon on a leash. So that's what was happening to this guy. He needed to get his sermon on a leash, and it didn't make any sense. And so, and everybody just was going like that. So after that, one of the elders of the church took him aside and he said, son, GPC. Yeah, I think it was a call. I think God was saying, go plant corn. It's a joke with a punch behind it, because that's true for a lot of us. We feel like we're called to something, and yet we don't always get that call quite right at first. We don't quite understand what the call is. We can get confused about our call. And I think it doesn't always help that our signature Bible stories about the call, especially the ones about the call of Jesus' disciples, like we heard today and last week, those calls, it seems that it's so right and it's so fast and it's so right on. I mean, there they are today, they're fishing and they're fishermen, which means they weren't out for leisure fishing. I mean, that was their business. They were out doing the business, and Jesus calls them, and at least my mind, I always saw that at that point they left everything behind and went on with Jesus, and they never looked back. Except that when you actually start reading the gospel, you have to kind of begin to wonder if that interpretation of that might be right, because everything keeps coming back from time to time to them going out on these fishing boats again. So they didn't leave their fishing boats behind. In fact, some of the great stories in the Bible take place on the fishing boats, either Jesus telling them where to catch the fish, or coming up across a storm that they have to deal with, or all sorts of things. So that little girl picture I had of they just leave it and they go and they never come back, you know, when you really start thinking about it, not only is that probably not true, but it would be strange if Jesus would have taken away the business that supported all those people and all those families for all these people to just follow him around doing nothing but begging off of other people. That doesn't sound like Jesus. And so that means when we hear that, we've got to kind of look again and say, well, maybe we got mixed up about that call. Maybe when he called them to go fish for people, he wasn't telling them to just leave off fishing entirely. We also get a little mixed up sometimes when we hear about God calling people. We're thinking that all we're talking about is God calling someone to ordained ministry. In fact, we get a little mixed up by just calling ordained ministry the ministry anyway. How many of you have ever heard somebody say, oh, he or she's been called to the ministry? Yeah. And when you hear that, what do you think? Preaching, something that they get paid for. That's right. That's right. And yet, it's a central call, not just for certain people, but to everybody that we are called. So that can't be right. So it can't be right that God calls us totally to just leave behind the things we know and are best at. And it can't be true that God only calls certain people and only to certain things like preaching, because that doesn't seem completely right. So it means we've got to go back and look again when our preconceived ideas of what those Bible stories tell us and the truth seem to slap us in the face. Well, so when we go back and look at that story again, what you notice is he doesn't say, I will make you preachers. He doesn't say, I will make you rabbis. He doesn't say, I'm going to get you positions in synagogues all through the countryside. He simply says, follow me. He calls him to follow. Just to follow. So the fishers of fish are called to follow him and learn how to use the same skills they have at the job of fishing, not to leave them behind, but to add to them. To still fish, to still make their money doing that, support their family's business, but at the same time to take those skills and to use them in new ways, that they might be transformed into ways that reach out to people. He shows them how to live in a way that proclaims good news, how to still be fishermen, and live in a way that brings healing to the brokenness of the world. And yes, they leave their job from time to time and go with him to learn more, as do we all, when we are learning what it is to transform what we already have into a new way of being. But it's not a call to leave everything behind and just have a small cast of people that get paid to stand up and preach. It's a call to each and every one of us. Called to do whatever we do in this life in a way that brings good news and healing to a broken world. We see that in many different people, famous people, if you look back, of how they experienced the call, and none of these people are ordained. And none of these people have stained glass windows painted after them. Few of them may have a lot of pictures taken of them and are written in history books. For instance, Sojourner Truth, born a slave named Isabella Baumfried in southeastern New York, until she finally escaped because she had a vision or a dream that she was supposed to go to this family that was a Quaker family, and so she did that one day. She took what was the courage that was already inside of her and escaped and went to this family, this Quaker family, and they bought her and then freed her. And then one day, years later, after that, she had another vision. She had a vision that God had renamed her from Isabel Baumfried to Sojourner first. And she wrote this in her autobiography, which she dictated. that God renamed her Sojourner because she said, I was to travel up and down the land, showing the people their sins and being a sign unto them. And then with something else that was a part of her, which was a lot of courage and straightforwardness, she didn't let it rest at just Sojourner. She asked God to give her a second name. And she says, and I quote, because everybody else had two names. And the Lord gave me Truth, because I was to declare the truth to people. And in years to follow, as she did her work of doing just that, traveling and sojourning in many different places and always speaking the truth, she described it as a call. And she described her call this way. It was in an interview, actually I think with Harriet Beecher Stowe. And she said, and I quote, "The Lord has made me a sign unto this nation, and I go around testifying and showing on them their sins against my people." Called by the Lord, not to leave who she was and become something totally different, but to take who she was in sign and let it grow into even more. Now let's go to somebody that's completely on another side of that, both in years and in what she did with her life, Oprah Winfrey. In Oprah Winfrey's book, The Path Made Clear, Discovering Your Life's Direction and Purpose, she shares a moment in her life that became something of a call for her. It was in the late 70s, and she had been working as a news anchor, a reporter in Baltimore at a TV station. And she never really liked the job that much, but it was a job. And her bosses didn't really like her that much. She writes, "They told me I was the wrong color, the wrong size, and that I showed too much emotion." And then they demoted her. They demoted her from the news to be co-host of a little talk show called People Are Talking. And she says it was in that little talk show and that demotion that she learned what it was to be truly alive. She said when the hour ended of that first time that she did it, she writes this. She says, "There was a sense of knowing resonating within my heart, radiating to the hairs on the back of my neck. My entire body told me this is what I was supposed to do." She writes, "There was no doubt that the seeds of what was to give my life meaning and purpose had been planted. That day my job ended and my calling began." Let's go to somebody else that's different from both of those women. Let's go to a white Southern man. 39th President of the United States. You know who that is? Bingo. Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, known not so much for being president, but for the incredible humanitarian things that he has done since he was president. Still building habitat houses up into his 90s. Once he was asked why he continues to do what he does, he said, "This is not optional. My faith demands that I do whatever I can, wherever I can, whenever I can, for as long as I can, with whatever I have, to try to make a difference." A call. Those calls don't call us away from who we are, but make who we already are even more. That set us alight so that we know that what we're doing is not just a job, but a call, like Oprah Winfrey. Allow us to continue to use who we are in our own story to set other people free, like Sojourner Truth. And understanding that we don't retire from that call when we hit a certain age, but that we do whatever we can, whenever we can, wherever we can, with what we have, for as long as we can. And we see it. The Ash sisters who started Love Kitchen, that was a call. The 9 churches, which included St. John's, who started a little thing called the Refuge back in 1986 when I was on the staff at St. John's, located then on Hinton. to help people not just with their rent and utilities, but to hear their whole story and to try to help them become more than just somebody who needed help with a utility bill, and has now grown in with a merger with the Volunteer Ministry Center to an enormous thing where people can get all sorts of help that give them a step up no matter how far down they are. Fish, which started over dissension. When Jim Wright looked around and saw that most of the pantries in town, you could only go on a certain day or a certain time or only get a certain amount of food that somebody else picked out for you, and that you could only do that maybe once a month, and said, people know when they're hungry, and our job isn't to decide who gets how much. Our job is simply to take what we can find when we can find it and feed them. And from that has grown this incredible fish operation, one of which pantries is located here, pantries all over town, and other ways of reaching out to people, helping to feed more than 8,000 people per month. Way more than 8,000 people per month, and all of that put together. What you'll look at if you look at all these things is none of these calls are ever perfect because we're human. And we can look at them, we can say, well, this could be done better, or that could be done better, or why didn't they do this instead of that? But the truth is that when you've got a call, you know you've got it. And the way you know it is not from outside, it's from within. So what sets your heart on fire today? What gets you excited? What makes you think, if only I could? Those are the way calls come. And the good news is that the thing isn't if only you could. The good news is you always can. Amen. Amen. Let's take a moment of silence.